Okay, so I'm going to remove that part and probably just put that part on Patreon.
Okay.
But we'll go ahead and kick it off. Jordan Wilkins, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Career spanning a pretty decent amount of time in special operations as a corpsman. I think that's really cool. As a corpsman and then moving up, I think that's such a really cool career path. I think I've given a lot of hate to the Navy on this podcast, but I hope people know that that's mainly the blue side Navy that I give my hate to, and that I love the green side Navy and everything that you guys do for us. And don't get me wrong, I love a lot of the blue side Navy too, but
to be
it's
fair,
tough work.
I also will put hate towards the blue side.
It just is what it is,
Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming on. I'm looking forward to talking to you. I don't get enough corpsmen on here. My first guest was actually my corpsman, Cam Emil, who's our advisor team corpsman to Sangan.
Okay.
He's episode 1 and 2. And I think I've had a couple other guys on. Tyler Fogg, who was an Anglico corpsman, who also went on to become a SEER instructor. But I don't get enough corpsmen on here, and I think it's a really interesting career path for like the Greenside guys. And there's some like weird little, things that you guys can do in that. So I'm interested in hearing, why did you decide to join the Navy? Why did you decide to become a corpsman?
Yeah. So always growing up, I knew that I wanted to help people, and I didn't know exactly what that looked like. So, I graduated high school. I was in college doing network security because my dad did network security, and tinkering with routers and all that kind of stuff. And then there was a big shift in my interest to like the medical field for whatever reason, looking at paramedic or firefighter TV shows and things like that. And so while I was going through college still, I was doing night classes for EMT Basic. So essentially, EMT Basic can, drive the rig, help you with some oxygen and maybe your inhaler or EpiPen, and that's pretty much it, right? But when the first call that I got was on a 2-year-old boy that was unconscious. They'd already started CPR, and looking back in the history, he had, quote unquote, fell off his bed multiple times, and turns out that that wasn't falling off the bed. It was his dad was abusing him. And so that was my first call, and like my personal like wake up call to like, you have a bigger purpose than to, program routers and like do network security stuff. 2 weeks later, my mom showed me like the obituary for that kid because he died.
Oh, damn.
So that was my kind of intro to medicine, essentially. Mm-hmm. And so from there, I was like, okay, well, where can I do this stuff at the pinnacle? Where can I be at the top for this, right? And so I'm a person that no matter what I'm doing, if it's important, I'm going to research it, right? I'm not going to make some fly choice and walk into a recruiter's office and sign the papers that day. Like, that's just not me. So I bought books. Like, I was reading Masters of Chaos for the Green Berets. I was reading all the Dick Marcinko books, for
classics.
6. I was reading books on Recon, Force Recon, and Air Force Special Operations and all this stuff. And I was just like digging into like, okay, where can I best have an effect on helping people?
Yeah.
So I went and talked to all the recruiters. The first one, I walked into the Marine Corps office and I was like, hey, I want to be a medic for you guys. And I didn't understand the corpsman role at that point. So they're like, go next door, see the Navy. And of course, everybody going in the Navy that's a dude wants to be a Navy SEAL, right?
Of course.
And so I was like, I'm gonna be a Navy SEAL. At the time, it's not like it is today. It was SEALs didn't have their own rate, right? So the Navy has rates where like HM is a corpsman. Now SO is a SEAL, a special operator.
Yeah.
Previously, it was like you could be any other rate, like an ET or whatever the case may be, a CS, and then just in parentheses, you would be a SEAL, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I didn't know they changed it to just SO.
Yep. So now you can go like direct accession to SO, be a SEAL. So yeah, I was like, I want to be a Navy SEAL. And I went to the Navy recruiter and I was like, hey, I'd read about the Fort Bragg schoolhouse for special operations medics, right? Green Berets go there for 18 Delta, Ranger medics go there, civil affair medics, SWIC and SEAL dudes at the time went there until they created their own school. Mm-hmm. All the special operations medicine was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, and this is a very, iffy with, like if I can do this, if I pass BUDS, SQT, all that stuff to be a SEAL, can you guarantee me, like in writing, that I'll be a medic and not like a comm dude or intel dude or whatever the case may be, or weapons guy or whatever? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to become a Navy corpsman and I'm going to find my way there somehow, right? So, I mean, over that course, I'm talking to Navy SEALs, I'm talking to recon dudes, I'm talking to Green Berets, from the community. I enlisted from the Seattle MEPS, so northern, northwest Washington, that kind of stuff. So anybody that can find, I'm trying to glean information before I go into boot camp to kind of go down this road. And Recon Corpsman was kind of on my radar, but not really. I went through Navy boot camp, which really wasn't super crazy. It was like we would get angry because we couldn't PT as much as we wanted to, essentially.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
Yep.
I need more PT.
Yeah, exactly. So like
nobody else is asking for that in any other boot camps. That's crazy.
So they had like these big stanchions like in the middle of the barracks, and so there was a dive motivator program for the SEALs and SWIC, but if you didn't have that contract, you couldn't do it at the time. So I'd be like knocking out push-ups, behind one of those stanchions, just trying to like stay in shape. Because before boot camp, I was like, I'm gonna be a Navy SEAL. I'm gonna do this stuff. I was running like 10 miles a day, lifting weights, all that kind of stuff, right? So, after boot camp, get to Corps School, Naval Hospital Corps School in Great Lakes. They have a dive motivator program there. And that's where I really got introduced more to the SEAL versus recon side of things. Because we had people, we had a SEAL that was converting to corpsman because he broke his back. And so he led a lot of these like PT events in the morning, like 02 in the morning, like we're running to the pool and doing all that kind of stuff. We had an ET1, which is electronic technician first class. And he was a diver. So we had that end covered. And then we had a chief corpsman that was running it. And so we do these PTs and everything in the morning. And honestly, I hate to say it, but from all the SEALs that I met and like seeing this dude that was converting into corpsman, and then also meeting like Force Recon dudes from the Marine Corps, it was just a stark contrast to what I was expecting. So my experience was that for the most part, not 100% of the time, but for the most part, those SEALs were just like super arrogant, like talking down to everybody, just for lack of a better term, like douchebags. Like
you'll have that.
like, and I hate to say that because I have a couple good like SEAL friends, but that was at least at the time kind of the culture and community. But every recon or force recon dude I talked to was professional, like knew their job inside and out. And I was like, okay, like maybe I need to rethink this. And ended up, choosing to go down the Recon Corpsman pipeline as opposed to going to Buds and doing the SEAL thing.
So when you go into that pipeline, though, I mean, how do you even move into that? Because you go to your MOS school, learn all your basic corpsman stuff and everything from there, and then is there like an announcement there, like, hey, who wants to try out for Greenside, like corpsman? I mean, how does that work?
So, I mean, at the time, every male, every dude that was going through Corps school, he was going Greenside, period.
Oh, really?
Now, there was, with the Dive Motivator program that was there at Corps school, there was an opportunity to screen to go Recon Corpsman, right? But either way, you started with being a Greenside Corpsman, you go to Field Medical Training Battalion, and train there. And that's where you actually get your orders to the Recon Corpsman pipeline. And then everybody else that graduates Field Med, that's where they go to their standard fleet Marine Corps units.
At what point, I think some people don't realize this, but at what point do they ask if you want to do the Marine Corps standards or the Navy standards? And then if you do the Marine Corps standards, for people that don't realize, you're allowed to wear like the Marine Alphas and stuff like that, but with the Corpsman insignia.
Yep. So that happens close to the end of Field Medical Training Battalion. So they have two schools for that, one in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and one in Camp Pendleton, California. So towards the end of that, they essentially, they write out what we call a page 13. So essentially, hey, I'm saying that I'm going to adhere to the Marine Corps standards of uniform, haircut, shaving, like all that kind of stuff. I'm no longer adhering to the Navy standards. And really that's a choice that each specific corpsman can make. I chose not to make that choice because I was not super excited about having a whole nother set of uniforms I have to maintain and like grooming standards and like all that kind of stuff.
That's a practical way to look at it. And don't they have to run the PFT as well, or is that not?
Yeah, I mean, we had to run the PFT as well, but it is a requirement if you choose to take those, regulations.
I only saw a handful of corpsmen that did that, but I will say the Alphas, or not, the Alphas with their rank and everything on it looks pretty good. It looks pretty sick. I was like, damn. And it throws people off. Yeah. People are like, what the fuck is that? Like, what is he doing?
No, absolutely. They look good. That was just not for me, I guess.
Just not your style. I mean, yeah, that's cool though. I mean, so moving on to the Greenside. Yep. Seems like the way, I mean, if I was going to be a corpsman, I would never want to do that job. I personally wouldn't want to have to deal with all of that. But if I was going to do it, that'd be the way to go, right? You know, unless you want to sit on a hospital ship or something like that, which could also be cool, but for different reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a big fan of being in a hospital and that kind of stuff. I like being out in the field. I love my Marines. Most of my career was spent with the Marines. Actually, my entire career was spent with the Marines, and it was only my last billet where I was actually at technically a Navy command, but I was still here 29 Palms, serving with the Marines, seeing the Marines, McSess students, TG, like all those guys.
29 Palms.
Yeah.
You finish up FMTB. What was your first duty station after that?
So after that, I got orders to the pipeline, right? So, graduation day happened at Field Med and my orders weren't there. And so I waited for this HM1 to come out and, tell I don't remember what unit I was supposed to go to, but it was, somebody in Lejeune. But tell them hey, this dude's coming with me. And so now I have official orders to the Recon Corpsman pipeline, right? And from there, once you complete that, you can be sent to either, Recon unit, Marine Recon, or Marine Special Operations Command.
You're designated as a SARC at that point, right?
After you graduate, yes.
After you finish, is there more to that than BRC?
Yeah.
Or what all? So what all is your pipeline for the corpsman going through that?
Yep. So there's a little bit of like temporary duty. So I hung out at 2nd Recon for a couple months, hung out here and there, just in between schools so that the course dates lined up.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially the pipeline begins with Basic Reconnaissance Course in Camp Pendleton. From there, I went to Basic Airborne at Fort Benning, Georgia. Did that. Happened to get married right after that. So that was interesting. And then for me, I went up to, some dudes go down to dive school next. Some go to SOCM or Special Operations Combat Medic. And so I went to Fort Bragg, Special Operations Combat Medic first, knocked that out. Then it was Marine Combatant Diver down in Panama City Beach, Florida, and then dive medicine right after that before I got my orders to MARSOC.
Man, how long is that process?
Total pipeline was about 2.5 years or so. The current pipeline, because essentially when I went through, it was the medical course was split in half. So it was like, you do 6 months, that would be SOCM, Special Operations Combat Medic, that was focused specifically on trauma, anatomy and physiology, all that kind of stuff. The second half was known as Special Operations Independent Duty Corpsman, SOIDC.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the time, you would go do the 6 months as part of your SARC pipeline, and then do a deployment on a team, come back and finish the second 6 months. Yeah. Whereas the 18 Deltas, the Green Berets, would go just straight through for that full year. And now actually MARSOC has been doing that with their corpsmen. And so there's really no more like doing 6 months and then doing 6 months later. It's all like a year. So really the whole pipeline is pushing close to 3 years at this point.
Man, that's crazy. I guess it's a little easier to do the full thing now when there's not the pressure of Iraq and Afghanistan.
True.
Like trying to get those rotations of guys in.
Yeah.
So let's back up to I didn't know it was that long. I knew it was kind of long, but I didn't realize it was that long. What was it like going to BRC? You said you were prepping to go to SEALs, and then you went through boot camp, which was kind of lame, and you go through the other training.
Yep.
And if your experience is like mine, it's all, I don't want to say a letdown, but like you're not PTing as much as you thought you would in a lot of cases. So at this point, did you still feel pretty comfortable, like, and ready to go to BRC? And what did you struggle with while you were there?
So, I mean, I remember talking to my now wife, girlfriend at the time, as I was like getting on the plane to fly out to Camp Pendleton from North Carolina, and just like, kind of like the awe of like, I'm going to train where like all of these heroes have been built, right?
Legendary. Yeah.
And so that for me was pretty awesome. Obviously in any training program, there's going to be some letdowns. But overall I found BRC to be very, professionally run. There wasn't a bunch of just like BS. Like, we don't have time to deal with the BS. It was just like, okay, we have a mission, focus on it. Like, if somebody's not making it, they're going to get cut.
Yeah.
They can have their second or third chances or whatever, potentially, depending on their attitude. But like, this is the place where we make Marine recon warriors,
Yeah, you're not fucking around. So at this point, this is probably the best course you've been to at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look at, I remember a quote from, I don't remember the specific quote, but one of the staff sergeants that was at amphib phase down in Coronado, because we do a couple weeks down there at Coronado for amphibious reconnaissance. And he was like, listen, I'm going to be straight up with you. 99% of the time, this job sucks. The 1% is where you see in the movies or like the highlight reels or whatever. And in those cases, it's amazing. But most of the time, you're going to be cold, wet, hungry, and miserable. And just, some dudes were just like, they heard that and they were like,
Wait,
maybe
what?
I don't want to do that for the rest of my career, and that's fine for them. But for those seeking to be kind of at the pinnacle, it was the place to be.
You just have to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Exactly.
And then also that shared misery is an experience. It's like, well, a lot of people's most memorable moments in the military are these like shared misery experiences.
Yeah. And that's the best way to build a team. Like,
yeah,
throw them all through some shared suffering and you'll build an amazing team.
Yeah, they're either going to come out like rock solid together or just ready to kill each other. It's going to like, it's really no in between there.
Yep.
Yeah. So moving on, you finished BRC, which is, it's funny how you're like, yeah, I went to BRC and then I went to, it's like, that's a huge accomplishment. You just kind of went across it real quick.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Not many people can say they've done that, especially on the Navy side of the house. How many other Navy personnel were in your class?
So I believe there were 6 of us.
Yeah.
I can't remember how many made it out of BRC. I know at least 1 or 2 dropped, but it was just me and my buddy who made through the whole pipeline together without, getting rolled back at any phase, whether it was SOCM or airborne or dive med. It was just me and my buddy. There were a couple others that ended up making it after, a rollback or 2. And unfortunately, one of them is now a triple amputee and deployed with 1st Recon Battalion. But,
damn.
It takes a lot to kind of continue on with that kind of goal in the distant future,
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, I did BRC, check. Like, I still have another 1.5 years plus, before I'm actually on a team doing the job. And every step along the way, they're like, this is just the basics, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
it's like you're in such a rush to get there and you don't even realize how little you know.
Yeah. And at the same time, those guys that deployed or that graduated Field Med and didn't go Recon Corpsman, they'd already done like their first deployment.
Yeah.
And so you're like, I'm missing out, like I want to go and do what I'm supposed to do, but you're like, I gotta get, all this training done first to be able to, reach that level.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, again, those guys are busy too. Like I mentioned at the beginning, Cam, my corpsman with the advisor team, in his one enlistment, he did 3 rotations to Sengen, and it was just like, one of them he got blown up, one of them he did our advisor team, another one, it was just like 3 times the Sengen in a 4-year period. That's insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that's crazy though. Can you talk about the SOCM? Like, what are you learning there that's different than what the average? Because I'm sure there's some corpsmen that are going to listen to this that are like, man, what's the additional stuff that you learn there?
Yeah.
What are the opportunities? And then what does the Special Operations Independent Duty Corpsman course take that? How does that take it to the next level? What does that allow you to do that having the other certification doesn't?
Absolutely. That's probably a really long-winded answer, but so SOCM, the short, quote unquote short course for 6 months. Like I said, it's focused on trauma, combat trauma. The difference between just going through Field Med as a corpsman and going through SOCM is the immense amount of anatomy, physiology, pharmacology you get right up front. So they're expecting you at like doctor level, like going through med school. Like, I understand the chemical composition of ketamine and what it does to the body, the indications, the contraindications. And, there's a lot of people that, they may be good with hands-on stuff, and they're good with, doing their TTRC lanes, tactical combat casualty care, and that kind of stuff. But they don't understand kind of like the why behind everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the why is what we need, because we're essentially sent forward of most other operating forces. And we're going to be out there, you know, alone and unafraid, supposedly. And we're going to, we're not going to have any real support around us. The only thing may be a medevac if they get there in time. But we need to be able to understand what's happening with the human body
Mm-hmm.
as it's being injured, as we're trying to treat it, and how we can sustain it until we get it to the next level of care, which is most likely an operating room, right? And so if you don't understand the why behind that, essentially most Greenside corpsmen, they're just on an algorithm. So if A, then B, if B, then C, and they're just running down their algorithm without understanding the why behind it. So when a wrench gets thrown in there and you have somebody who's, you know, maybe you have to hold on to them longer than expected, and they get septic and that kind of stuff, like how do you treat that? Do you have the medication to treat that? So really understanding the why behind everything. And then we just drilled everything over and over and over again until it was muscle memory. Me and my buddy, actually, we had a stuffed animal horse that we would like do injuries on each other, you know, for each other, and just like run scenarios over and over and over again. And, you know, for the knowledge piece, I had stacks to the ceiling of, you know, 3x5 index cards of like things I need to memorize and know for all this stuff. On top of that, you know, without getting into too much detail, Fort Bragg is the premier place to conduct live tissue training, right?
Yeah.
So we do the live tissue training there on the goats, and being able to actually see the response physiologically and with those animals is like, I've worked on a bunch of different types of mannequins and like, you know, things that are trying to be like live tissue. Nothing compares, at least right now, nothing compares to that.
Yeah, it's an actual thing. It's an actual. I've had the opportunity to do live tissue twice.
Yeah.
And both times my corpsmen that were doing it with us were like, "This is the best medical training you can get." They're like, "This is," you know. And I've done the mannequins also.
Yeah.
You know, the really expensive mannequins that squirt blood, and it's just like, it's just not realistic. Sometimes there's issues with them. I mean, and I think the thing that really stood out at the end of the live tissue training, that the contractors that we were working with, you know, we did the pigs. We didn't have the goats. We did the pigs, and you know, they're shot and stabbed and amputated in some cases and stuff like that. And at the end of it, I remember the instructor being like, you know, look at everything that's been done to this pig,
Yeah.
and it's still alive. And you're like, okay. So it kind of gives you like, oh, okay. It's not just like a training rep. Okay, let me pack the wound. Let me do this, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's done. You're seeing that, oh, even with all these traumatic injuries, it's still alive.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. So it kind of gives you, it's almost like doing the gas chamber.
Yep.
It's like, okay, well, I know my gas mask works now. You know?
Yep. Yeah.
Like, okay, I feel a little bit better. It works.
Yeah, absolutely. On the flip side of that too, we've had, because I've done, you know, live tissue with pigs and everything as well. There are some that just, you know, get a small injury that you would think would survive and end up, you know, dying quicker than you expect.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it can kind of be a, you know, double-edged sword with that.
Do you think they'll ever be forced to phase out the live tissue training?
I mean, right now, everything is done to, it's called the IACUC standards. I have a feeling that, I mean, that's been the driving force behind like PETA and, you know, a bunch of the other organizations that are like, we need to stop this.
Mm-hmm.
But they haven't been able to find a good enough replacement for it. You know, I imagine someday they may be able to build the best mannequin with AI and whatever else, and the most realistic feeling skin and organs and like all this stuff. But I have a hard time, at least right now, seeing something that could replace live tissue.
That's almost like taking that cadaver training out of like medical school,
Yeah.
Or something like that. It's like, I don't think you can really replicate the actual like handling of, and for those that may not be aware of what we're talking about, this is something where they bring these animals out and they're completely sedated. I remember we had like vet techs on hand that were going around monitoring everything. They were referred to as patients the whole time.
Yep.
It's like a whole thing, it's not like we're torturing animals,
right.
That are sentient and
right.
know what the hell's going on.
No, it's definitely, it's highly controlled and regulated.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's so much pressure on it. There's so much heat. And I remember anytime we did it, it was always off-site. It was off-base.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like we'd drive to somewhere in the middle of nowhere, like a farm that had like blackout fencing around it.
Yeah.
Like in different locations. It was kind of crazy. But yeah, that's interesting though. So when you move beyond that, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because a lot of people do TCCC training.
Right.
I did it. I know a lot of guys during the Global War on Terror did it. I thought it was really good training, and I thought it gave folks that were getting ready to deploy who hadn't deployed yet, like probably their first actual insight on traumatic injuries and what they look like. You can talk about, oh, so-and-so got his leg blown off, blah, 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 blah. But I remember when we did our TCCC training, the first class, like within the first 5 minutes, they were showing slides of IED blast wounds in Iraq. They were taken in Iraq right after they happened. And there was another advisor team in the training with us, and one of the lieutenants like passed out from just seeing the stuff. I was like, oh shit, like
those officers.
But it was like, the pictures are like, oh damn, it's like stuff you don't want to see, you know what I'm saying? But it's I don't know, it's important to have that kind of knowledge when you're getting ready to deploy.
Yeah, and I think there is something to be said with stress inoculation, and part of that being like seeing these actual wounds, because when you're going to treat these wounds, you can't sit there and be like, oh, that's gross or whatever. And like, this is your time to shine. Like, this is your time to, do what you're supposed to be doing. Right.
Yeah.
And especially conventional side, corpsmen and Marine Corps, like the corpsmen are, unlike special operations, they are just there to do the medicine. Like, if the first sergeant catches you on like a machine gun, like you're screwed, like you are just there to save Marines. And now there's been plenty of corpsmen who definitely went above and beyond. Yeah. There's also like they're considered non-combatants and things like that with the conventional side. So.
Yeah, I remember Cam would tell me, he said I think it was his first deployment to Afghanistan, that he stopped wearing his corpsman insignia and started wearing Lance Corporal chevrons and changed his bag out as well, because they started targeting the corpsman. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah. It's crazy, man. So when you get to the second portion, what changes from the SOIDC, like going through that, what does that allow you to do that all these other courses don't?
Yep. So this is where it really turns into like a thinking man's game, right? So you've done all the trauma stuff, you understand anatomy and physiology, pharmacology with drugs. This is where you actually implement those things into like nursing and surgical practices. Part of that is we go into the lab and we actually like look under a microscope and diagnose things. We see pets and like military working dogs and things like that. And there's actually a day where, the vet brings in like their mule, and people will bring in their dogs and cats to get vaccinated so we can work with animals and that kind of stuff. Because part of the mission, downrange was, we would do what's called vet caps, where essentially we'd bring all the animals from the villages and we, deworm them or whatever the case may be. And then you really get into like the surgery, anesthesia, and nursing capabilities, which is having that combination from trauma to the surgery, anesthesia, nursing. Like this whole spectrum is not seen really anywhere in civilian medicine. So like a surgeon, civilian side, does surgery. Like that's what he does. He has a nurse there. He has somebody handing him instruments. Like he does surgery. That's it. Right. And he's really good at it. Right. Nothing, bad to be said about that. But in each of these specialties, they just do that one thing. Whereas we're in the middle of nowhere with a team remotely, we have to be able to do all of the things. Right. So MARSOC specifically was kind of designed similar to ODA's, Green Berets.
Yeah.
So essentially we have two SARCs or SOIDCs on each team. So the idea is that if there's, a significant surgery, whether it's a amputation or debridement or something like that, that needs to happen, one of them can act as the anesthesiologist and the other one can act as the surgeon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, essentially the culminating piece of SOIDC school, after rotations and all that kind of stuff, is essentially a 3-week, almost 4-week process where you're buddied up with somebody. You are given, your live animal model, a goat, and your entire mission in life is to keep that goat alive and healthy. And in that process, you're going to have a couple things happen. You're going to have the initial traumatic injuries. You're going to have to stabilize them from that and then recover them from that. So when it's your live animal model, you're going to be the surgeon. When it's your buddy's live animal model, your goat, they're going to be the surgeon and you're going to be the anesthesiologist. And then in between there, you're taking care of everything for that goat, right? You're making sure they're peeing. You're making sure that you're analyzing all their labs. You're doing x-rays if you need to do x-rays. You're checking their wounds, all that kind of stuff. So essentially you do 3 major surgeries, the one being the initial stabilization, second being a debridement of whatever major injury they have, and the third one being an amputation, which in my experience actually proved to be significantly important because I ended up, having to assist in an amputation, in country in a tent in Afghanistan.
No way.
Yeah. So pretty rare. But I had the opportunity to do that.
It's crazy you described that as an opportunity. What? That I just flashed back to like Civil War.
Yeah.
What do they call them? Bone saw?
Yeah. So our bone saws we call giggly saws. And so essentially you go at it.
Oh, it's like those tree saws, those like handheld tree saws?
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, like a little kind of like string in the middle.
Yeah.
That's the saw.
Wow.
Yep.
That's crazy. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but tell me some details about that. How did that happen?
Absolutely. So, first deployment in Afghanistan, there was a local Afghan that, for whatever reason, accident or otherwise, had his hand essentially shoved into one of like the wheat harvesters or harvesters of some kind. And so he came up with just like his entire forearm just mangled, right? And fortunately, we had a Army unit there, that had some surgeons and that kind of stuff. And so I was able to go over there and kind of help him out with it. I definitely wasn't like the number one dude, like all the decisions, but we had we ended up amputating essentially at the elbow for his right arm. I have a couple of pictures of it somewhere, I'm
I
sure.
do not want to see that. Thank you, but no thank you.
But then what was even crazier is there was a facility down in Herat, I think. Either Herat or Bastion, I can't remember, but there was a facility that did prosthetics for the Afghans.
Really?
So, like, after we recovered him, we used what's called the Copeland method for healing and recovery and that kind of stuff. And we sent him down there, and he was able to get like a prosthetic hand.
Oh,
It's not
that's
like
crazy.
the electronic stuff we see with our troops and stuff today, but it was enough for him to be able to like survive with his family. So
Yeah, I mean that's such a different world to have that's almost a death sentence to have like an amputated
Yep.
limb, because I try to tell people I'm like it's such an agrarian society where hand to mouth, you're like working for your food every day
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and to have a limitation of any kind is detrimental.
yeah, absolutely.
Man, that's pretty wild. Was the surgeons, the army surgeons, were they those like special operations like surgeons that come in?
Nope. I can't remember the unit that was there, but it was a decent sized army unit.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't like the special operations surgeons and that kind of stuff. It was just like an orthopedic surgeon and an anesthesiologist.
Yeah. Because there's some pretty high level
Oh yeah.
like surgeons and stuff that work with like the tier 1 units and stuff
Yep.
that go out, and if you see them in their kit, you wouldn't even realize that they're doctors
Yep.
and stuff, but they're a full surgical team.
Yep. That was actually
Um,
one of my dreams to go to that, but had some other hiccups. So
Just didn't happen. What's the difference? So when you're talking about that kind of level of care that you're providing, I always thought it was kind of interesting, the tricky flights in Afghanistan, which was the British Chinook that would come in a lot of times for mass casualties because of Chinook and stuff like that. But it was my understanding that they had like a surgical prep team or something on board, and that they would do a lot of the work, kind of like what you're describing, on their way, after picking up someone on their way to the next role of facility.
yeah. So I have less familiarity with the tricky flights just because we used dust off, so Army medevac most of the time. But we've also used like the Air Force SOST Special Operations Surgical Team, and that's kind of what I equate that to. So like they're able to do like in-flight surgical care and things like that, more advanced procedures that
Which is crazy.
everybody else.
Imagining doing that. Yeah, that's so crazy. Like thinking about like either beginning some surgical procedures or like prepping for surgery in the back of a helicopter.
Yeah.
That's blacked out and everything. Like, what a wild job, man. There's some crazy jobs in the military.
There are.
You're out here freaking cutting arms off in Afghanistan. I've never heard of that. That's the first time I've heard of anybody doing an amputation in country. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Of that kind of in the field, at least.
Yeah.
Well, I guess let's back up then. Let's talk about how you're done with all these courses.
Yep.
You're certified. You're getting ready to go to MARSOC. What was it called at the time? Was it Marine Raiders yet, or was it?
No, so I think it was 2014 that became the Raiders, and usually the stepwise process for a recon corpsman is, you get done with the pipeline, you go to Marine Recon, you do a deployment there, maybe you go to Force Recon, and then from there you maybe look at MARSOC. Just the way that it worked out timing wise and who needed people. Myself and my buddy, the only two that made it through the whole pipeline together, down at dive school, finished dive med, and they're like, we have 2 sets of orders for 2nd MSOT, so Marine Special Operations Battalion at the time, MARSOC, and do you guys want them? And we're like, yeah.
No, man. No, I've been doing all this for nothing.
Yep. So, that's just what, kind of like the happenstance was just like, these are the dudes that needed people. And that's where we ended up.
Well, real quick, I forgot. I did want to ask, what was dive med like?
Dive med was good. From what I understand, dive med is largely influenced by the instructors for dive med. because it can be just very plain and like memorizing dive tables and treatment algorithms and that kind of stuff. But we had two very good instructors. And so like for us, at least in my experience, it wasn't just like do dive medicine. It was like all aspects of your medicine and you're doing it while diving. And so we did things like, water rescues with parachutes. They lay out like a parachute in the water down in Panama City Beach, and we'd have to, follow the lead lines and like get to the edge and then do whatever we needed to do. And so they were the tests were also very difficult. The written tests and the practical application tests were very difficult, just because of how they designed the course and wanted it to be. And honestly, my first patient I ever saw once I got to second MSOB was somebody going into the recompression chamber for like tissue healing after a gangrenous. They had a motorcycle accident and they had a piece of tissue, that was placed over an area that was supposed to be healing. And so we were doing, hyperbaric oxygen treatment on them.
Man, that's so crazy, dude. What a cool job.
Yeah.
What an interesting career path. I love the military stories from different people because there's so many different things that you can do and so many things that you can be exposed to, and stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, like you said before, a lot of times when you get into the medical world, you're really focusing on certain aspects. You really specialize in something, no matter what level it is. You may have some little tertiary like things that you know about, but to get as much like training and then hands-on and be expected to remember all this stuff too.
Yeah.
Be able to. That's so crazy. When you got to second MSOB, did you feel like you were ready? Were you like, okay, I'm ready for this, or was it like, oh shit, here we go?
I think it was a little bit of both. Like, I'm excited to go and finally do what I'm supposed to be doing, but at the same time, we had a guy that's from dive school. We called him, and say like, hey, we're coming up and we're excited to be there. And just kind of his mannerisms, I'll say, are very direct. So it was like, oh, you're excited to come? Oh, I bet you are. Like, it's just like intimidating for like no reason.
Yeah.
But once you got there, man, when they tell you through that training pipeline that this is just the basics, like, I can't explain how much that's true, just because the learning curve there, which is why I usually, you go to Recon or Force or something like that first before you go to MARSOC, but the learning curve there is just like straight up. And it was a difficult learning curve. And, I was practicing, speed reloads in my living room with a target in the wall for like hours. And just like, so many things to learn, from medicine to comms to, shooting and so many different things that you can't, while you're going through this training pipeline, you don't know. Right. And so the willingness to just, bear down with it and like learn as much as you can, like a sponge, is super important. And part of that is remaining humble, which we might get to later. But like some of the dudes that just were like, oh, hey, I'm awesome, I'm good, I got it. Like, those are the dudes that fail miserably.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. When you got over there, was there now a lot of the enablers have to go through like the SOCs like pipeline, like a little bit of training? Was there anything like that, or BRC that was it for you? There was no other additional training at MSOB?
So I mean, once you get there is additional training, but it's not like it is today, with the enablers and everything. I mean, because you have specific requirements with MARSOC, like everybody has to go through, annual T-Tri-C. Everybody has to go through SEER level C, full spectrum. So, I mean, you got to go through shooting package, you got to do X, Y, and Z, to hit all these wickets. So, I mean, there's definitely things that you have to do that
Yeah.
kind of happen really between every single deployment, with the exception of like having to go back to see her again. But
there's no like intro, like selection, like mini selection or anything like that for you to be there. Okay. How long were you there before you got assigned to your first team, or was that just immediately? You just got put on a team immediately?
No, so I did about a month roughly in the BAS Battalion Aid Station. And the reason for that is, one, to kind of learn the ropes, get all your gear checked out, like all the admin stuff, do the house hunting if you need to, things like that. But also it's, the Navy started requiring that every Greenside corpsman get their Fleet Marine Force, their FMF pin, right? And so
of all the stuff you've already done, you got to go back and learn the stupid FMF stuff.
You got to learn all the FMF stuff, and like how much,
which there's a decent percentage of that information in the little book that you're supposed to learn from that's incorrect and outdated.
Oh yeah.
And it's so stupid that they force you to learn stuff that's incorrect and outdated to get that pin.
Yeah. So essentially it was like, you have to get this, and most corpsmen, because I was a battalion surgeon at 3-7 more recently, most corpsmen get, the FMF pin between like 8 and 18 months after being at a FMF unit.
Yeah.
Essentially we were told from day one, like, you have 30 days to do this, and if you don't do it, like, you're not going to a team, and there's going to be an issue. So,
it's crazy how much pressure the Navy puts on people for those pins.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And it's just like, yeah, it's crazy. So that was that period. Like I said, me and my buddy went up there together. He wasn't married at the time. I was, and so I took house hunting leave. And so essentially there was a hotel company that was looking for another corpsman, just one other corpsman. And so he got placed with them. So he was going to deploy sooner. And then I got placed with Fox Company, Team 1, A211.
And when you got there, I mean, what's it like first time walking in the team room? Like, hey guys, what's up?
Yeah.
I'm here. Doc's here. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, intimidating, especially with MARSOC, because, at the time, it wasn't like junior Marines that were coming in. It was kind of half and half. It was older Force Recon dudes that got kind of grandfathered in, and then it was older, like, snipers and recon men that got picked up from MARSOC, right? And so all these dudes had, multiple deployments, experience, all that kind of stuff. I remember the first day we walked in and talked to the first sergeant, who was an old sniper dude, and he was like, "Doc, you got to have 2 things on you at all times, and one's a watch and one's a knife. So if you have to stab somebody, you can tell them what time it was." And I was like, "Okay,
cool,
like, let's go."
Like, I get that, I guess.
Yeah.
Makes sense. That's fun.
But no, super intimidating going in there. But just, man, being able to be humble in those situations and just like realize, like, yeah, I did, the last 2.5 years of training, but I don't have the experience that these guys do. And just being able to like soak it up like a sponge is super important.
Yeah. How long were you on the team before you guys got tapped for your first deployment and started the workup?
So I mean, with the special operations cycle, like, you're always in some form of workup, right?
Okay.
So, if the end of a deployment is the end of a cycle, then the next thing is individual training phase. And so, that's kind of what I rolled into, is like, guys were off at different schools getting capabilities for the team to be able to do what we needed to be able to do as a team. From there, it moves up to like team level training, to company level training for about 6 months, and then like a it ended up being 10 months for us on the first deployment, but roughly it's supposed to be like a 6 month. So it's supposed to be a 2 year cycle, 6 months individual, 6 months team, 6 months company, and then 6 months deployment. So I was, lucky enough, whereas my buddy got thrown into kind of like the team, company level workup and got a shorter workup, I was able to start earlier with my team and kind of like, go to a couple more schools, get some footing underneath me, and then, shooting packages and like all that kind of stuff before we actually ended up deploying.
What non-medical, non-corpsman training was like the best for you?
Oh,
maybe the most practical, or even your favorite, even if it wasn't the most practical.
Yeah. So my favorite actually ended up, it was after my second combat deployment. Essentially I'd gotten to the point where I did pretty much all of the medical schools, and I was like, okay, like I'm trained as a medic, like as a corpsman, as an SOIDC, like let's start branching out a little bit. And so I started getting into the intel world a little bit and doing technical surveillance. So the Marine Corps has the Marine Special Operations Technical Surveillance Course, MTSC. And that for me was, that was a great time. Honestly, it was tons of fun. I learned a bunch. It brought in stuff from, when I was doing college for network security and things like that. And with that, kind of grew my ego a bit larger than it should have, because I was like, think of all the things I can do, because, we're picking locks, we're doing, B&Es, like, breaking into locations, we're following people, doing tagging, tracking, locating, all these, kind of half spy-ish type things. And I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah. That sounds pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, that sounds pretty legit. That's such a random course for you to get sent to, but
Yep.
I mean, that's one of those things, right? When you get sent to another country, that's a lot of reconnaissance. That's one of the levels of reconnaissance there.
Yeah, and I mean, I was the first. So there's only been 2 corpsmen that have gone through that course.
Yeah.
I was one of them, and then another one of my buddies a couple of months later ended up going through it. But man, part of that is having like a good cover, and medicine is probably the best cover that you can have in a third world country.
Yeah.
Like, hey,
there's a lot of operations that have been built off the back of like a medical something.
Yeah.
Humanitarian aid, something like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Man.
So yeah, for me, that was probably one of the best courses I went to, next to the Fort Bragg medical course.
I've had a few friends that went into counter intel and they got to do something similar like that. And it just sounds like a pretty legit, of what I know of it. Obviously I don't know very much about it, but it sounds pretty cool, So let's get back to you're at your team. You guys got your different levels of training going on. Well, what point do you get told where you're going? And then how do you start to focus training towards that? Is there, a shift? And then let's talk about like getting into country.
Yeah. So second MSOB at the time was just Middle East. So we knew Afghanistan. Like that's where we knew Afghanistan. We didn't know exactly where, but that's where we're going. At the time it was called Special Operations Advisory Group, but now it's known as Third Raider Battalion. They kind of had a responsibility for Africa. And then we had first MSOB that was responsible for PACOM, essentially, right? So we knew we were going to Afghanistan, and so we're building, intelligence pictures and all that kind of stuff along the way. And then we're working that into training throughout the whole process. So, after everybody gets back from individual training phase, we're working as a team and like, okay, we know we're going to Afghanistan. This is kind of the terrain we're looking at dealing with. So this is how we as a team are going to focus our training, right? And then same thing with the company level. like, we're going to go here. You know, we ended up going to Dugway, Utah. We ended up doing Moyock, North Carolina. We did stuff down in Texas, like all these different places where it was like, we know where we're going, what we're trying to do, and build packages for, and then train for that, you know, together.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're getting ready though, and you're getting ready to go over, there's different roles that different teams can do. So sometimes some of the MARSOC teams, the MSOTs, are going over and doing direct action.
Yep.
Sometimes they're doing the foreign internal defense. What was your team's role in this during this deployment?
Yep. So actually for all three of my deployments, it was all under the umbrella of VSO, Village Stability Operations.
Okay.
Largely. Part of that is going to be direct action. Part of that is going to be FID, foreign internal defense. Part of that's going to be special reconnaissance. You know, like there's different aspects to that. But definitely that first deployment was village stability operations. Like we were going into villages, living with them, and then we were training essentially like we called them ALP, Afghan local police. So that they could essentially protect their own, you know, little village. So that was the whole premise behind the first deployment, less so the second and third, but it was still kind of present there.
Those Afghan local police guys, man, they would cruise around in these little sedans with like a PKM hanging out the window and stuff. And it was like, dude, you're going to get blown up. Because they don't wear uniforms.
Yep.
You know, they're like the lowest level. I think it was because you had the ALP, then you had the AUP, I believe, were the ones that wore the blue uniforms, right? They had like a weird
ANP,
kind of
I believe, Afghan National Police.
Okay, ANP. Yeah. There's yeah, I remember those ALP guys, man. They're just some homies riding around with machine guns. Like, who are these dudes?
So, I mean, as we're getting into country, you know, so on this first deployment, well, let me back up a little bit, just throwing some personal stuff in there. So my wife and I are married. We have our first baby November 6, 2010. And then I deploy on my first combat deployment ever to Afghanistan, Thanksgiving Day, 2 weeks after she had this baby, right?
They were really nice of you to get your 10-day baby leave.
Yeah. So that's kind of like leading up to it. But yeah, we get in country, and essentially what we're doing, and this kind of echoes throughout the other deployments, is it sounds a lot cooler than it is, but essentially we were a biker gang with a couple side-by-sides, and we just went around like hunting Taliban and, you know, helping train these local police. Like we bought motorcycles off of the local economy, these Parwas, you know, 50cc, like, you know.
Yeah. Now they're all using the electric dirt bikes now. You know, that's like the thing now. You guys were the forerunners. You're testing out the theory, getting the little local. Hey, the Afghans, man, you know as well as I do, the Taliban guys use those little bikes and mopeds to great, you know, they like roll in a pack, and then as soon as they know something's about to happen, they all just scatter in all different directions. There's, you know, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah. So, I mean, we had access to, you know, some of the larger vehicles, MAT-Bs, RGs, things like that, but nothing was as effective as rolling around on motorcycles, because, you know, Taliban's not going to put an IED in the middle of a goat trail, you know, because that's where all the, you know, locals go, and, you know, they're not trying to lose that fight as far as, you know, the visualization goes, or, you know, destroying the locals. So, I mean, we'd use all these like outer paths and goat trails and all this kind of stuff, just riding motorcycles all over the place. And it was a great time, but it was interesting.
I know by my 2013 deployment, the Taliban was getting worried about their their public image.
Yeah.
They wanted to stop killing as many locals with IEDs and stuff. So they were starting to make these IEDs that wouldn't, there was different ways that they did it, that they were so wide that only a military tire could set it off, you know, like a regular car or motorcycle going over it wouldn't set it off, or a certain weight. You know, they had these different ways to try to mitigate that. So yeah, no, that makes sense to, you know,
I mean, even
in on something they use.
I mean, the first deployment was late 2010 through summer 2011. And I mean, we even saw that there. April 2011, we had an issue in Joykar, Afghanistan, which is like northwest. So we were in Bagdad province, which is pretty close to Uzbekistan, that kind of stuff. Kind of in the middle of nowhere. But I can't remember if it was 5 or 6, but, you know, we had the Afghan local police just, you know, wanding over everything to see if there's metal. We ended up digging up 5, I think, of those IEDs, and our IED tech, or EOD tech, EOD tech, Dave Day, he was a prior Recon, or not Recon Corpsman, but a Recon man, reconnaissance man, a Marine, team leader of the year before that, and became an EOD tech. And so he disarmed like those first 5. We got to the 6th one, and it was a lot bigger. And earlier on in the day, I had actually rode over that in a motorcycle, like the exact spot. And, you know, I was maybe 25, 50 meters away with our JTAC, Chris Goski, and when it went off and he was trying to disarm it. And, you know, it was set for specifically like the heavier vehicles, like the MATVs, the RGs, things like that. And so it wouldn't go off if it had, you know, foot soldiers or motorcycles or side-by-sides going over it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, even 2011, we were seeing that.
Did that kill him when it set it off, or?
Yep. Oh, yeah. That was probably my first, like legitimate Afghan casualty. So that went off. I was sitting in a side-by-side next to Chris Goski, the JTAC, and just like staring at it before, you know, a couple minutes before Dave came and grabbed something from the vehicle. And I was like, hey, you need help with anything? He's like, no, I got it. All right, cool. And I go over there and I'm just sitting there and the explosion goes off. And this thing goes, you know, hundreds of feet in the air. And of course, you know, I grab my med bag and I start running, and, you know, I look in this massive crater and I see we had, usually he wore like 5-finger freaking, like the Vibram 5-finger shoes or whatever.
Oh,
okay. But for whatever reason that day, he wore his A-Solos, and it was like this blue boot, right? And I'm like, what? Like, why is this boot in there? And so I jumped in the hole and started digging for him, because I was like, if his boot's there, maybe the rest of him is there, like buried somehow, which makes now to me no sense, right? Because the explosion obviously goes out. I have no idea how his boot ended up in there, but I'm like digging through there trying to find him before our signals intelligence guy, you know, calls my name, and I hop out of the crater and go over there, and he's literally like he no longer has eyes in his skull. He's literally half, you know, through the body. Like there, as a corpsman, there's zero things that I can do to save this guy, right? Like he's done, and the rest of the day essentially is a recovery operation. So, you know, secure the perimeter, all that kind of stuff. And then
that's why I wouldn't want to be a corpsman, man. Having to deal with that, like that's too much, you know. For me personally, I just couldn't. I don't think I could deal. Like, I don't know. It's like how many times can something like that happen and you'd be okay? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because it just takes a little chip at your soul, I think, every time something like that occurs, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, that's crazy, dude. I am so glad that I was never there when any of our guys got blown up. Like, I think on my first deployment, I wasn't. The only time I ever saw someone that got hit by an IED was one of our Afghans on my second deployment. On my second deployment to Afghanistan, and so I don't know. It was a little different, I guess, because it was an Afghan, which is fucked up to say, I guess. But it was also like it's a little different than one of your buddies.
Yeah.
But man.
Yeah. I mean,
that's crazy.
That, like, I mean, as we're trained, you know, according to Geneva Convention and everything like that, we're supposed to treat every single individual that's injured essentially the same, right?
Yeah.
About a month and a half later, that I had a mass casualty incident, and you know, I had Americans, Afghans, and like local national Taliban, and you know, trying to choose how I spent my time was very difficult.
Yeah, because you're triaging. You know, you have to triage and treat the worst to the, you know, and the worst could be the Taliban guy, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, it's a difficult call, and people, you know, I think sometimes people don't realize that we do that. You talked about earlier about treating the person and having to amputate and stuff like that. That's obviously a horrific thing that has to happen. But had that person not had that medical capability at their disposal with you guys being there, what would have happened to them? There were so many civilians that we treated in Afghanistan, kids that had been burned, you know, like, because they all use propane fires and stuff to cook. There's like, thing blows up or whatever. They spill boiling water on themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, you know, and I don't think enough people realize, I don't think we get enough credit for the amount of like just day-to-day injuries that had nothing to do with even the war that we helped the locals with.
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
there was a little girl, I think she was like, she might have been like 4 or 5 maybe, got just like one of their, you know, their protection dogs, you know, because they don't keep pets, but they'll keep these dogs for protection. Just like
Afghan dogs,
just bit her butt cheek, just like ripped it off.
Oh God!
And she was the biggest trooper ever. Like I grabbed a bottle of Coca-Cola and put some ketamine in there and had her drink a little bit of it until she got a bit woozy, and then, you know, I had to go in through and debride it and like make sure she was good. But she was a trooper.
They're hardcore people, man.
Yeah.
We had this Afghan police officer that had been shot in the stomach. I think it was twice. I think he had 2 gunshots in the stomach, maybe only once, but either way.
Yeah.
But he was just like taking it, just laying there, kind of having a conversation.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, dude, you just got shot in the stomach, and you're just kind of like, whatever. Maybe he was. Maybe they had him all drugged up by that point, but I don't think they did. Because I brought my corpsman over there to go. You know, us and the corpsman went over to go check him out.
I mean, they also got the Neshwar, you know. So I mean, they got that stuff in half the time, and that's got some poppy and stuff in there. So.
Tell me about this hunting Taliban on motorcycles, though. Was there any like really cool? I mean, this sounds like you're a motorcycle gang. Give me like a cool story from when you guys were doing that.
Oh, jeez. I don't know if it's a super cool story, but one of the nights that we had an issue with it was the second combat deployment. We were down in Delaram. And, you know, again, we're riding around on side-by-sides, ATVs, and motorcycles, primarily motorcycles. And there's a, can't remember if it was ANA, the National Army, or if it was National Police, but there's a checkpoint, right? And so we coordinated with the checkpoint, like, hey, we're going to be here doing this operation. It's going to be in the middle of the night. This is kind of when we're doing it, you know, so please don't shoot us, right? Yeah. We take off, and, you know, 30 minutes later, you know, we're making our way through all the wadis and everything like that. And, you know, PKM fire and just like starts coming in from this checkpoint. And so like dudes are like, like ghost riding off cliffs, you know, not massive cliffs, but maybe 10, maybe 15 feet high at the max. And just like we spend the next I think it was 2 hours on the radio trying to convince this checkpoint that we're not the Taliban and we just talked to you yesterday,
Yeah.
like
why are you on motorcycles? Americans don't ride motorcycles.
Our interpreter is talking to them and is like, we're not Taliban. And they're like, you sound like you're Taliban. And we're like, no, do you hear our English? It's just, it was crazy.
That happens sometimes, man. When you get all these mix of forces and stuff, and you're doing something that normally, they're used to regular military convoys and stuff like that, not like a biker gang cruising through the wadi, coming around. Man, that's super cool though. Those ATVs ended up being extremely dangerous. I think there was multiple people who were killed in Afghanistan with those, because those ATVs weren't regular ones. They were a lot heavier, I think, than regular ones because they had racks on them and stuff.
Yep.
And guys would have them roll over on them. There was a JTAC that was killed when his ATV rolled over on him. When he was going out to do a night aerial resupply drop. And that happened. It was something along those lines, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have any deaths, but in training, we definitely had some injuries with the ATVs. And then on deployment, the first deployment, the side-by-side, the LT ATVs, we had the scissor mount on the passenger side. So we had a 240 there for the machine gun. We have ammo in the back, all this stuff. And we ended up getting into a gunfight on one operation. And the driver of the side-by-side was kind of a more junior. He was a corporal, more junior, motor T Marine, not a special operator. And we were like, hey, don't go that way. You're going to get stuck. Go this way. For whatever reason, he chose to not listen and just go the way he wasn't supposed to go, and had a rollover and ended up breaking his humerus just in half because the roll cage just rolled right onto his arm. And so I had to evacuate him for that.
Man, that sucks. That's
morphine shots, the whole thing.
In the middle of a firefight.
Yeah.
Hey, good job, guy. This was a motor T guy that was out on this op with you guys?
Yeah.
Man, that doesn't happen very often, right?
So it kind of depends. Definitely with I think things have changed over the years, but MARSOC was in its infancy, right? So,
yeah.
We didn't have a ton of special operators to go around. We didn't have a ton of dudes that were trained. And the Marine Corps is very much you're a Marine and that's special enough,
Yeah.
That's the best you can.
Every Marine is a rifleman.
Exactly. Right. Which is why it took so long for the Marine Corps to come up with MARSOC, because they were so just
adamant against it.
Exactly.
They forced him to do it.
Yeah.
Donald Rumsfeld forced the Marine Corps to do it.
Yep. So with that being said, there's a lot of oh, you need a motor T guy, send the Marine from 3-4 or whatever. And so we would have to bring those people into our team.
Those people. How dare you? How dare you? I was motor T back in the day. I'm a former motor T guy.
Yeah.
Damn.
But we'd bring those people in and through, workup and training and that kind of stuff, we develop some level of trust or level of distrust, because there were definitely some that we were like, you're staying on the fob no matter what.
Yeah, for sure.
So
take out his firing pin just in case.
Exactly. But yeah, there weren't enough of us to go around.
So you had to.
You got to do something. Our FOB security was typically ran by a platoon of conventional army.
Okay.
We don't have time to plan ops, execute ops, and do all this stuff and guard the FOB at the same time. And so we delegate that to, we request those forces.
Yeah. And since you're part of SOCM, that's pretty standard package that they give you, right, for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I remember when I was Motor T, my buddy was Motor T, also Harper, and he was trying to go over to MARSOC for selection, and while he was waiting for his seat or whatever, he got sent there as a mechanic.
Yeah.
And he ended up deploying with a team, and he was like, yeah, I was the only mechanic there, and it was a MARSOC team and a Green Beret team. And he's like, they'd have me help them like shoot mortars. I'd help them with the mortar pit because it was right next to where I'd work on vehicles. Yeah. And he's like, when we'd go out on raids or something like that, I was in like a defensive position or a blocking position,
yep.
Up on the machine gun or something. And I was like, fuck yeah, dude.
Yep.
I was like, hell yeah. I'm Motor T at the time. I'm like, that sounds so awesome.
Yeah.
Like this. But hell yeah. That's good, man. You got to use all the people, right?
Yeah.
You do what you got to do. And I mean, if you're going to have anybody, at least have a Marine in there, I guess, because at least they have shot a bunch of different weapons, even if they are Motor T.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Motor T wise, like our second deployment, we had a full on like chop shop for our motorcycles.
Hell yeah!
Before that deployment, they sent us to Colorado for a month to do motorcycle training, like dirt bikes and things like that. And part of that was like a mechanics course. And so when we got on that second deployment, dude, we had this giant tent, and like there's dudes like welding in there and like grinding stuff down and like messing with clutches, and like it was full on.
That's a sick, man. That's so cool. Like, damn, I wish I would have got to do something. Damn, that sounds. Yeah, you guys are running like the Helmand Valley choppers.
Yeah. Yep.
Everybody's got their custom stuff going.
I forgot to mention, but the first deployment where you were talking about, having issues with the ALP and like recognizing them, dude, we had cuts made.
Oh, no way.
They were jean jacket cuts that had like the Afghan flag and like MARSOC logo on the back of them in these giant patches. Like they were just riding around in just like these motorcycle gangs.
Man, does anybody have one of those?
I do. Yes.
You have one?
I'd have to find it.
At some point, you should consider letting the Marine Corps Museum like temporary borrow that.
Dude.
That would be such a cool display to see something like that. People wouldn't believe it. They'd be like, no way.
Yep.
Man, if you have it, send me a photo of it and I'll put it on the video. I'll put it on the video so people can see what it looks like. That sounds cool as fuck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man. So, wow. That's definitely different than my deployments. There was no motorcycle chop shops and gangs. When I was a mechanic, I do remember, and you probably remember back in the day before like all the UTVs and stuff like that, they did have like a diesel dirt bike.
Yep.
And some people got to go through training. And I remember I was a mechanic, and that was one of those things I really wanted to go do, and I never got to do it, was go through the course. To the writer's course, because as a mechanic you go through the writer's course, and then you get to go through the maintenance course. And I was like, oh, sick! You get your motorcycle's license, you get all this stuff, and I was like, and it's just something different, right? You're riding dirt bikes, you get paid to ride a dirt bike around. But I never got to do it.
Yeah, so. Sorry.
It is what it is.
I think we had like two of those older Marine Corps dirt bikes, and then we just built a fleet of like local dirt bikes.
The local ones, did they also run on diesel, or were they
gas?
Okay. Yeah, I always thought it was crazy. I was like, I've never seen a GP8 dirt bike, like I think they were like Kawasaki or something like that, if I remember correctly. When you so on this first deployment, were there any what kind of engagements were you getting in? Like, what was like the enemy composition that you were kind of seeing? I know it changes obviously, but if they were going to stand and fight with you, what would you kind of see as like a common enemy composition?
Honestly, it kind of varied. Most of that deployment was winter, right? So we left in November, came back in July. So really like the winter time frame, there wasn't a ton. It was really sporadic. We were just, kind of doing really kind of presence patrols and like investigating everything and trying to work with local leadership of the villages and like doing key leader engagements and stuff like that. So it didn't get real crazy until like spring, summertime.
They announced the start of the fighting season.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, it's the standard, PKMs, a couple AKs and that kind of stuff. we did have a couple mortars that we had to jump into some ditches for. It was a lot of kind of more long range, like less CQB type stuff, and more, one of my gunnies, he ended up taking a shot across the Bala Murghab Valley, and I don't remember the exact meters, but it was like some insane shot that killed this dude. It was like 2,000 meters or something, like ridiculous.
That he killed, or he took the shot and killed a Taliban guy, or vice versa?
Yeah. So he took the shot, killed the Taliban dude.
Okay, I thought you were saying your gunny got shot from that far. I'm like, wait,
No,
what?
no,
A Taliban sniper shot 2,000 meters?
No.
Okay.
No, he was on the 50 cal at that point, and so it definitely wasn't like one shot, one kill sniper. It was like, we're gonna bracket this dude, and we saw him run into the cliffs and that kind of stuff, and ended up getting him.
I think that's the way it works a lot of times with those longer range shots. I think like the record breaking shots, I think a lot of those they've said that it takes like 2 or 3 rounds to kind of get it on target.
Yeah. We worked a lot with like IED, not that we worked with, but we were going after IED manufacturers and stuff as well.
Yeah.
One of our kind of more famous ones was actually a midget. So that was interesting.
Oh, I heard about that guy.
Yeah.
That guy was kind of famous in Afghanistan.
He was, yeah. We ended up not getting him on that deployment, but Hotel Company, the next deployment, ended up getting him.
I remember that.
Dude.
Yeah, it was like a big deal.
Yeah. We were on a patrol one time, and like I was up in the gunner seat for whatever reason, and I was like looking off, and I saw a midget, and I was like, that has to be him.
Yeah.
Because how many midgets are in Afghanistan? I don't know, but I feel like there's not many.
There's not many.
But dude, we got up closer to that guy, and I'm like, it's not him. Like,
it was another
totally different midget.
That's
And
crazy.
I was like, dude, I almost smoked you. I have a picture with the guy, like I'm hugging the guy.
Like, my bad.
Yeah.
My bad, bro. It's all good. It's all good. Did you guys ever encounter fighters that would like throw grenades or anything like that? I knew guys that would get into these like grenade battles with Taliban.
Yeah. So we had that happen once on that first deployment. It was kind of our last big mission, and that's where I got like the mass casualty incident in Panarak, again, northwest Afghanistan. But yeah, we had dudes that were like trading back and forth like grenades over this compound wall with these dudes, and those two dudes that were trading grenades with them ended up being my local national casualties. So that was interesting to say the least.
That is something I'm glad I never had the experience of having to deal with. Throwing grenades over a wall and having them fly back, having this literal back and forth grenade tossing with people.
Yeah.
I've met a few guys that they've been in situations like that, and I'm like, man, that's insane. Like that's another level of up close fighting when you're chucking grenades at each other.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't actually there for that. Like, I wasn't doing the grenade throwing in that specific location.
Either way, though, that's still just...
Yeah. Two of my buddies were, and then one of them ended up dying later that day, but the other one died a couple of years ago in Iraq. So they were...
What brought on this mass casualty situation? Were you guys on like an operation? Something happened? Like you were ambushed, or?
So it was kind of like the culmination of this deployment, right? We trained multiple villages to have the Afghan local police. We had some success with it to the point where one of the villages, the Taliban came and kidnapped some of their kids and like took them away. And without our instigation, the Afghan local police went out and got them back, right? So they got back their kids. So we were like, okay, success,
Yeah, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah,
absolutely. So we did a kind of a large operation with the Afghan local police, the Afghan National Police, and the Afghan National Army. And so Panarak, Afghanistan was where it was at. And our kind of link up location was in the center of a Y shape, right? And so there's going to be a force to the south, a force to the northwest, and one to the northeast. Mm-hmm. We'd all feed towards the center to complete like this 10-day operation, right? Clear out the Taliban, things like that. So I'm in the northeast component, which honestly to this day I think is probably the coolest I will have ever been, because we were in a Chinook, landed, and rode out motorcycles and side-by-sides into a gunfight, like Chuck Norris style, like
this is Delta Force movie craziness.
Yeah. So
were there rocket launchers on the front of the motorcycles though?
There were not, unfortunately. We did have our pistols kind of on the side of the gas tank, but not rocket launchers now.
Still cool though.
So I mean, that was like the coolest I will probably ever be. But we inserted my element inserted on the northeast side. And we have a couple Afghans with us, and then obviously parts of our team. And so we're traveling down toward the center, and probably 150 meters before we get to kind of some protection where we're supposed to go, there's a couple Afghans that end up stopping. And we had a Army Civil Affairs team. So me and this guy named Schmitty stopped with them while the rest of the element went forward into their, fighting position. We stopped with these 3 Afghans. I think it was 3, may have been 4, but at least 3 Afghans. And they were like, we don't want to go in there, right? Like, we know what's about to happen. Like, it's not going to be good. The gunfire at that point was kind of sporadic. Like, it wasn't a big deal. There's a huge difference between hearing, ping, ping, somewhere around you, and like a crack right next to your ear, right?
Yeah.
And so we weren't getting any of the cracks. So it's just kind of sporadic. And they're like, we know what's going to happen. Like, it's not going to be good. We don't want to go. So we're standing there for like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes with them, like trying to convince them to like go forward. And then we're going to be like in a more secure area. Finally we get them moving. There's a kind of like a rock wall to our right-hand side. And then as we're about to like turn a corner to go back to where we're supposed to be, like PKM opens up like huge volley of fire, just small arms fire, PKM going, machine guns, all that kind of stuff. There's a rock that I saw that was definitely like, I'm not a small dude. I had some issues and gained some weight, and now I'm even bigger. But even at the time, like, wasn't a small dude, but like this rock should not have been able to protect me. But I crouched down behind that thing, and then you had Smitty and the 3 Afghan guys like laying behind me, behind like smaller rocks. And so all that fire's going off, and so I'm talking to Chris Goski, the JTAC, and trying to get in, some fires. That happens. They're like, hey, it's incoming, bombs dropped, and one of our guys is like, hey, now's probably a good time to get up.
Yeah.
So we pop up, me and Smitty do, and we sprint towards the wall. And it's crazy because it in my head is like a movie, right? Like, I'm sprinting towards this rock wall to jump over it, and there's like impacts like to my left and to my right. And fortunately, I didn't end up getting hit somehow, thanks be to God. But end up making over the wall with Schmitty. The 3 Afghans stayed, though, for whatever reason. One of them ended up getting a bullet to the head, so the other 2 were just screaming the whole time.
Yeah.
At that point, a guy named Billy Widowitz, he comes, who was just previously throwing grenades over the wall, a couple minutes ago, comes around. He has the SAW, the M249 machine gun, right? And we're like, how are we going to get these Afghans back over the wall while all this PKM fire and everything's coming in? And to my dismay, I guess, we came up with a plan where Billy was going to jump over the wall, lay down suppressing fire, and the Afghans were going to come, we were going to go grab the Afghans, get them back over. And so, 3, 2, 1, like, go. That happens. Billy's out there doing his thing, suppressing the gunfire. We grab the Afghans, get them back over the wall. And then as Billy's getting over the wall, he gets a round right through, like right underneath his rear plate, like straight through the aorta, dude. So he collapses immediately, like on our side of the wall. And so from that point on, the rest of the day was I'm in, corpsman medic work time.
Yeah, you're just casualty care, triaging,
Yep.
and
So we had Billy. We had a difficult time getting in like a medevac just because of the amount of fire that was going on.
mm-hmm.
And so we got Billy out. At that point, he was dead. He was dead within a couple minutes.
Was he hit down by like his hip or something?
It was like right center spine, like right above his hip.
Okay. Yeah.
And came out around like his belly button. And so we had him, we had the Afghan that got shot in the head, so he was dead already. But then there were only two other corpsmen on the ground that I remember. And one was at the northeast position and one was at the south position. And so they essentially would send me their patients as to like the casualty collection point. Mm-hmm. So I ended up with, it was either 8 or 10 because I've been blown up a couple times and things like that. I don't exactly remember, but it was like, you had Billy, you had the Afghan that got shot in the head. And then we had 2 ANP, so the National Police. We had those 2 local nationals that were trading freaking grenades with our guys. And then we had 2 local police, I believe.
So is this just like a mixture of like gunshot wounds and fragmentation wounds from the grenades?
Yes. And honestly, the local nationals were probably the worst off out of all of them. Like the shrapnel from the grenades and everything had gone through their spine. The Afghan National Police actually, really I just wrapped them up a little bit because they had, a gunshot wound through part of their like lower leg that didn't really hit anything and they were fine. And things like that. So, I mean, it was definitely a wide variety of like severely bad injuries and death to, walking wounded.
Man, that sucks that that's crazy. Your friend was killed and that Afghan was killed because they hesitated.
Yeah.
All because of the hesitation. If they would have kept pushing forward,
yeah.
That's like, and I don't want to like compare it to a movie, but you see like in Saving Private Ryan when they're trying to get the people off the beach and they're trying to just like stay behind what they think is like protection.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, if you stay right here, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? And in a situation like that, it's so hard because obviously they don't speak the language. You're trying to reason with them, and they just, if they don't want to do something, it's hard to make them go do something.
Yeah.
And man, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy day.
How did you guys? I mean, what did the medevacs look like for that? Was it, I assume, multiple flights? You guys didn't bring in.
It was multiple flights. So we were actually able to get out Billy during daylight. The fire died down. Like we, dropped enough that the fire died down. That kind of stuff. We could get Billy out during daylight. Everybody else went out at nighttime. So it took multiple choppers coming in.
At that point, so from the point of that first Afghan gets shot to you guys are now pulling out of there, how long was that, do you think?
You talking about the medevacs pulling out?
Like, I'm talking about you guys did the op ended after that, right?
No.
Oh, you guys continued after all these medevacs? Okay. Well, let us. I thought that was it. I thought you guys wrapped up with all that and like, all right, let's get out of here. No. Dang. what was the follow on?
So I mean, it was a 10-day operation, and we executed the operation like we were supposed to.
And that was day one. That was
that was day one. The following days got better. We definitely got sporadic gunfire and that kind of stuff, but it was nothing like a full-on firefight like it was that first day.
Yeah.
So essentially what we did is, we cleared through these villages in this, Y-shaped valley as far as we could with the amount of people that we had. And then, tried to reestablish the Afghan local police, which really at this point are just, warlords, for a better term.
Yeah, that's exactly what they were.
Yeah.
They're the loosest definition of a militia.
Yeah.
And not really sure if they're a militia for us or maybe themselves.
Yeah, we had we had so many this might sound bad. We had so many AK-47s. It was like a cheap Russian variant or whatever, but it was like, if dudes would come up and tell us that they would fight for us and not the Taliban, we'd give them one.
Really?
And it was just like...
You're like, I believe you.
Yeah. And it was just like, go shoot that way, Like, it was...
Oh, you're talking about like in the middle of a fight.
Yeah.
They would come up and ask for a gun.
Yeah.
No way. That's crazy.
So they quickly became the Afghan local police. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's, we say a lot of bad stuff about their resolve and their ability to fight for themselves and stuff like that. But that's a pretty good example of some dude stepping up. If you're in the middle of a fight and they're like, hey, give me a gun and let's do this.
Yep. And
you got to give those guys props.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I met the village doctor and all that kind of stuff. And so I helped him out with the clinic over those 10 days and things like that.
When you meet that person, when you meet someone like that, like a village doctor,
yeah.
How much of it is you're just trying to assist them? Are you trying to teach them anything? Are you trying to refine some of their TTPs to what's kind of your relationship with someone like that? Because they probably see themselves as your equal, obviously not on the medical side, but
I mean, it really varies. Because especially doing the med caps, vet caps and that kind of stuff, I met people that were like, it hurts when I look at the sun, and people that would refuse to drink anything but energy drinks. And I'm like, your kidneys are shutting down. They're like, I will not drink water, but actually in Panarak, this doctor was trained in Pakistan. And
so he's legit.
He had some legitimate training and knew what was up. And so, in that specific instance, there wasn't a whole lot of me training him to do stuff. It was
okay.
How can I help you, continue what you're doing for this village, and surrounding villages. But yeah, we definitely run into some, quote unquote village doctors that are less than
bush
adequate.
Doctors.
And so we'll go through some training and we'll talk about medication and things like that.
Hey, wash your hands, homie. Let's try that.
Yeah.
Start with washing hands.
Dude, with the civil affairs team, we had them there, right? And this one village was asking for a well. And I told the village elder, I'm like, listen, we can get you a well, but you have to get your people to just not pee and poop in the street, because otherwise it's going to poison the well and you're all going to get sick and die.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can't do that. And I'm like, then no well. I don't know what to tell you.
I try to explain Afghanistan to people. I'm like, it's like a weird medieval kind of place with the occasional data plan if the cell phone tower generator is working.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. I've definitely seen people just walking down the street. They just stop, pull their man dress up, squat down, take a shit, throw some dust up on it, and keep going. You're like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's crazy, bro. But man, you take a casualty, one of your guys gets killed day one within the first, it sounds like the opening moments of this operation. How do you carry that through the rest of the operation? You got 9 more days.
Yeah.
This guy's obviously a friend, a vital team member, an asset. What's going through your mind after that? Or you just try not to think about it and just keep doing what you're doing?
So it's compartmentalization, you talk about carrying that. I'm not carrying that consciously through the rest of that operation. There was a point that night when myself and another guy just like buddy hug, and like that was it. Like we knew the mission had to come first, and we can deal with all the other stuff later. So I think that's kind of like the go-to is compartmentalize, deal with the mission first. We can sort everything else out later. You know, when we're not under fire, when we're not concerned about other people, you know, dying and things like that and making it worse. Because if you sit there and you wallow in it, or maybe that's not a good term, but
no, I think that's, you know, dwell on it,
yeah.
You know.
If you dwell on it during that period, you're not going to be, you know, switched on for the rest of the firefights that are going to happen, or the rest of the things you need to do. You're not going to be up on like your security protocols. You're going to be focused on, okay, I'm dwelling on what happened, when you can't do anything about it right now. You need to focus on the mission. And so it's always just mission first, and we'll figure out everything else later.
It's very similar to like home distractions.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I can't think about all the other stuff that's going on back there because this is literally life and death.
Yep.
You know, this is my main focus. And I think one of the problems is, though, you know, you said, hey, we're going to compartmentalize it until we can deal with it a little bit later on, is that sometimes guys never find that later on period.
Yeah.
They keep it compartmentalized. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And then that's the issue, because then you never let it out. And then and if that's like a habit, now you got all this crazy shit inside of you that you've never really fully dealt with. And at some point on some quiet night, you know, you're going to have to deal with your demons and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's not good.
No,
you know?
it's not.
I mean, I think that's one of the biggest issues we see with veterans, right? Yeah. Is guys just fucking don't want to talk about anything. They keep it all bottled up and everything. And don't get me wrong, I'm guilty. I think everybody has stuff that they don't want to talk about with anybody. But I think a lot of guys need to let go of some of the stuff that they're holding on to and open up to friends and family, and just, you know, just to let that pressure off. You got to decompress a little bit, you know.
I think it's difficult with friends and family just because most of, like, I didn't come from a military family.
Yeah.
So like saying some of these things, they're just like, they can't handle it, you know, just hearing it. And so like having dudes like that you can rely on to be able to go to and not be ashamed of, you know, talking to these guys, like your best friends, super important and vital.
Yeah, definitely. Probably one of the best things for my own mental health is probably doing this podcast, just because I get to talk about military stuff all the time. And I tell that to people. I'm like, you know, sometimes people forget the military is such a huge part of your life, especially if you've been in for a full career.
Yeah.
Such a huge part of your life. And then on that EAS date, you go pick up your DD-214 and you drive through the gate, and it's like, it never happened. Yeah. Now you're a civilian. And it's like, wait, what do I do with my hands?
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, one day this morning I'm out doing PT at 06 with the guys, and then we're going to go do this stuff. And then 48 hours later, you know, assume you're like a one enlistment kind of guy. 48 hours later, you're back on your mom's couch in Iowa or something like that, going, what the hell just happened over the last 4 years? And now they have no one to talk to. They have no one to, and that for me is like one of the worst things. And I think it's vital for people to reach out to people they served with.
Yeah.
Just a text, hey, what's up? Hope you're doing well. I send messages. I don't hear back from some people, and some people will call me and we'll have like an hour or 2 hour conversation.
Yeah.
You know, I think more, if we want guys to feel better or deal with mental health stuff, we got to push that. We got to push people. We got to push reunions.
Yeah.
We got to push like trips, you know, bro trips and stuff like that, or guys and girls, whatever. Because the alternative is just not good.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's kind of getting tiring seeing so many people fucking kill themselves.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating, and I just don't get it. I mean, I kind of get it, but I don't get it. You know what I'm saying? I get where people think that they may have peaked or they're dealing with something they feel like it can never get rid of. I don't know. People need some kind of hope, and I think that starts with someone reaching out to them and just saying, "Hey, man, hope you're doing well."
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm honestly terrible about that, like reaching out to dudes and things like that. And I'm like, I feel like I'm bothering them. You know?
No way, dude. No way, man. Don't ever feel like that.
I know, but like,
I don't want to chastise. What are you doing?
but that's like my feeling is just like they have their own thing now or whatever.
Who cares?
But yeah, no,
bother them. They want to be bothered, dude. There's nothing better than getting the occasional message from someone that I served with, especially one of my friends that I used to. It's crazy because these guys are like your best friends, and then 6 months later, you don't ever talk to them.
Yeah.
Suddenly, this person you used to go to chow with, used to go to the gym with, used to work with every day, used to go to the range with. 6 months later, it's like, damn, I haven't talked to so-and-so in like 4 months. I wonder what they're up to.
Yeah.
You know? Or now, if you keep going, oh, it's been 2 years. It's been 3 years. And it's never too late, man. I say everybody, every once in a while, maybe once a week, find someone in your old Rolodex, you know, your old contact list and go, hey, man, I hope you're doing well.
Absolutely.
And just send it, and maybe they respond, maybe they don't. Again, I've messaged a ton of people who've never responded, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe they will one day, but they know that I at least tried, and if they want to have a conversation, it's open.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's really
Man,
nice.
I don't want you, I hate that you said that, that you feel like you're bothering them. That's horrible, dude. You shouldn't feel like that. And I hope anyone that hears that feels the same way. Like, you're not bothering anybody by reaching out. That's the worst. That's what leads people to go do crazy shit, is that feeling that they think they're bothering people. Like, don't feel, yeah. Man. Well, man, it's, I don't know. We got to keep talking about mental health stuff and get people
Absolutely.
to understand that you do not have to accept your current situation. You do not have to accept your current whatever.
Yeah.
There is hope out there. There is things to do. Have you seen the Grand Canyon yet? No? Well, then maybe you should live a little longer so you can check that out first. Yeah. Maybe go check that out once, you know, before you go off yourself. Or maybe have you traveled some, you know, like, there's so much to see in this world. There's so much good that if you sit around and dwell on all the negative things, then of course you're going to be depressed and you're going to have this mindset. But you got to like move away from that negative mindset and dwelling, because the guys that were killed, the guys and girls that were killed in combat or injured, or they could only dream to be able to do some of the stuff that we could do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because you're still out there living, and it's kind of it's a disrespectful almost to sit around and mourn the memory of someone by drinking yourself to death until you go and off yourself. That's just they deserve better, and you deserve better.
Yeah.
You know?
100% agree.
So with that, I think we should wrap it up. I'm sorry for the little rant there at the end, you know, like, I don't know, man. I'm just tired of fucking hearing about people killing themselves. Yeah. It's just,
I mean, the most common situations I see is like dudes or dudettes, I guess, military.
Yeah, it's on all sides. Yeah.
Like they're in a situation where they don't see any hope whatsoever of it improving. So like for Chris Goski, talked about it earlier a little bit. Like he had, you know, an ex-wife that was hounding him and like all this stuff. And he had done like 7 or 8 back-to-back deployments and everything. And just like, he saw no out for it. You know, I, as his corpsman, was obviously tried to care for him. He was seeing like 3 psychiatrists at the same time and like getting all this help and, you know, all the stuff that MARSOC was trying to do for him in the Marine Corps. And just like, he got to a point where it was like, there's no way out of this, you know, there's no hope. And having some kind of hope, you know, is super important. For me, that's, without, you know, going off into left field, is my faith. But yeah, I see it most often in people who just have no sight of hope in the future, and they're just like, I'm done. And
what is all this for? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, man, I think that's good. Having faith, and getting into a church is something I've recommended to people as well. Like, you need community.
Yeah.
That's what you're missing when you leave the military is community, and you have to find that somewhere. And I don't care what people get into. I have no judgment on the things that people do when they get out, as long as it's something that's bringing them happiness and it's helping them like be a part of a community or something that, just, you got to have that. You got to have someone to talk to. You got to have people to associate with, because that's it. There's nothing worse than feeling like you're alone.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's just no one to talk to. Yeah. And I don't know. In the military is such like a special organization where it's easy to find community.
Yeah.
I was walking down the street the other day, and I just like literally yesterday, and saw a guy. He was in a wheelchair and he had a Marine Corps hat on. And I was like, "Hey, you're in the Marines?" And we sat there and talked for like 10 minutes.
Nice.
Just a random dude.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's out there, guys. Like, go find something. Go find community. It doesn't have to be military. And I also recommend people to find an outlet too. Do a podcast, write a book, keep a journal, write songs, do artwork, even if it's only for you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because you got to have something to like let that like creative, like you got to let it out.
Yeah.
And I think something like this is a great way to do it, like a podcast. Again, even if you just record something for yourself, because it allows you to talk through all these things that you've experienced.
Yeah.
And it allows you to, I think you're processing it, and I guarantee when we finish this interview for the next few hours, there's a million things that are going to pop into your head that you were like, oh, I should have said this. So I thought, I haven't thought about that for, because it just brings up all that stuff, and it helps you process it.
Yeah.
So
since you mentioned it, you mind if I talk about a book that we wrote?
Yeah, go ahead, dude.
Not to sound like a Navy SEAL, but
no, promote away. That's what this is for.
So this is the Untold Stories of Valhalla. It can be found on brotherrecon.com. And so essentially what it is, we're unfortunately now in our second edition, but it is a book of stories of men that have fallen in the Marine Recon, MARSOC, and sniper communities. And so it's written by teammates that were with them when they deployed, were with them when they died, written partly by family members, their wives, kids, things like that. Wow. And it's just meant to kind of pass on their stories, and they're legends because of the things that they've done to sacrifice and help build our country.
Send me a link to that, and I'll put it in the show description so that people can just click on it and go right to and buy something like that. That's Absolutely. Really awesome. Yeah. Well, you also have your other website, right? It's let me pull that back up. Is it karmatms.com?
Yep.
Go ahead and tell us about that, man.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of time between that first deployment and what's happening now. So recently retired medically after 19 years, 3 months, and 17 days. Not that anybody's counting. The only reason I remember that is because it's like March 17th, which is St. Patty's Day.
There you go.
So now I'm a PA, physician associate. I work with an integrative psych practice here in 29 Palms. And so one day out of the week, I do like virtual and in-person medication management for patients. The rest of the days of the week, I do business development on base here in 29 Palms, and then I do TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation. So essentially, we found locations in the brain, especially with depression, anxiety, PTSD, that have decreased oxygenation, decreased blood flow, and we use magnets essentially to stimulate those areas of the brain to kind of, for lack of a better term, wake them up.
Yeah.
And I mean, myself, the number one diagnosis on my on my medical retirement was PTSD, chronic. followed by a bunch of musculoskeletal stuff. And so I've been through like all the different therapies. I've gotten, 10 different medications for PTSD, anxiety, depression, which none of them really seem to do much of anything. I have done stellate ganglion block. I have yet to do like ibogaine or psychedelics or anything like that.
Yeah.
But the thing that I think has benefited the most for me and for the patients that I'm seeing is the TMS. So like I'm seeing better mood regulation. Like I'm not crying in the middle of the day for no reason. I'm not as irritable. My sleep's better. Now it's not like a magic pill where everything's fixed automatically. You have to go through this treatment process, and results vary. So like I'll have some patients that are, get their first treatment and they're like, I slept 9 hours last night and I feel great. And, I'm not as angry anymore. And, they're Vietnam vets and things like that. And then to like me, like the sleep actually initially kind of got worse a little bit for a couple days, but then started to slowly get better. And then the mood regulation started to happen and things like that. So there's definitely a variance in how people react to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like drug related. We're able to typically take people off of medication, which I am, even though I can prescribe medication, I don't really like to prescribe antidepressants. They have so many side effects and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So TMS for me has been great, and I think should be the way forward in the future. The biggest issue is like getting insurances to pay for it and stuff like that. But
probably have to get more studies done and everything, right, before they start covering it.
I mean, there's tons of studies. The studies aren't really the issue. The issue is they can make more money from, in my opinion,
longer treatment plans.
They can make more money off the medication, longer treatment plans. Whereas, if they do one treatment protocol with TMS, typically lasts 6 to 7 weeks. But they do one treatment protocol, and if they're, 50, 60, 70, 80% better and off medication, well, now the insurance company isn't making any money, right?
Yeah.
So,
man, that's your theory, huh?
That's my theory.
All right. No accusations here.
Yeah.
No accusations. All theories. Hey, anything that helps, right? Like I was just saying, even if it helps a few people, it may not be right for everyone, but that's the way it is. So as long as it's, doing something for somebody, I'm down for it. Hope, people, I'll put that link in the description as well. And people can go and check that out if they want to read more about it. I feel like one of my friends already told me about this and that he might be in one of the treatment. Yeah. I think he might be in doing this treatment actually. But yeah, so everybody, you can check out my website, jkramergraphics.com or anglicostshop.com. My Instagram is Former Action Guys, Former Action News. My Former Action News page is doing crazy, getting millions of views every month, which is wild. And, I want to give a special shout out. I was at the Rufus Du Sol concert this weekend, and Leo Lozano, who's an Anglico guy, was looking at my Instagram stories and saw that I was at the concert and sent me $20 on Venmo to buy me a drink at the concert. So that was super cool. The military community continues to shine, and Leo's a great dude, and I really appreciate that. And I thought that was pretty sick. But Jordan, really appreciate having you on today, and I think we should probably do a follow up and continue on the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, and it was good talking to you.
Yeah, you too, man.